right, so game one just is wrapping up here. We got a minute 20 left of Oklahoma City versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. Game one of the Western Conference Finals. And I did say Thunder in 5 when we made our official predictions for this series. And the Thunder are going to take game one. It was, for me at least, a bit validating because I got to be able to see how they're going to guard and how they're going to look guarding this Minnesota Timberwolves team. And they were guarding up so tough in the first half. And that's why they forced a lot of turnovers against the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first quarter and in also the first half. And pretty much in the entire game, they forced a lot of turnovers. But also, they weren't getting anything on the offensive end, right? Shea was 2 of 13, right? He was getting some free throws, but that's pretty much it, right? If we're going quarter by quarter, let me pull up my notes here. Randall, in the second quarter, splashing them threes. Anthony Edwards rolled his ankle at one point, and that was the kind of the test, I guess, for how Randall is able to handle the spotlight of being that star player, right? And he handled that real well. He was shooting lights out from threes. And the steals from the Oklahoma City Thunder. There was one point where Julius Randle had his back to the basket at like the upper mid-range area, right? And then just Jalen Williams just runs around, boom, slaps the ball out of his hands and gets a steal, right? And it's going to be, it looks like 114 to 88. OKC is going to take that. What a game. What a great game one by the Oklahoma City Thunder. And so Minnesota, they're up 48 to 44 at halftime. The Oklahoma City Thunder did not shoot well in the first half at all, right? They were honestly very lucky that Minnesota didn't hit some wide open threes. They could have been down by like 15 if everything went well for Minnesota and they were hitting their shots. And the T-Wolves, right away into the third quarter, started getting into foul trouble. But they were also hitting their threes, right? That was the Minnesota Timberwolves. They would get into foul trouble on the defensive end, but then they would just hit their threes on the offensive end. And then at one point, they just couldn't shoot. They just couldn't shoot the basketball. And it just was. But the thing about it is they had wide open looks. That's the thing. They had the looks that they wanted. They had the looks that they could live with. And they're sometimes wide open. And they just could not get those shots to fall. And then Oklahoma City Thunder just going on a big run, slashing to the rim. They were a force to be reckoned with in the paint. They didn't shoot that many three-pointers, I do believe. So they were just rim running the entire time. And they were getting and ones, right? Shea is a free throw merchant at this point. He lives at the line. And it just goes to show you like what their overall game plan was. They are attacking the rim and they're attacking the Minnesota defense. And they're like, hey, we're going to get you into foul trouble. And then anything you do from here on out is just going to result in us getting 2 free throws. And, that run was pretty much predicated on and ones and dunking and slashing towards the rim, right? And so after the third quarter, they're up 76 to 66, right? 10-point lead going into the fourth, excuse me. And then Chet Holmgren started deciding to cook, right? He's slashing to the rim, getting foul calls, right? Just being a menace in the paint. OKC controlled this game in the paint, right? I want to see how many in the paint points they had. I'm sure it's a lot because Minnesota was really good with their three-point shooting. Oklahoma City Thunder, they were amazing in the paint. And they pretty much got, to be honest, whatever they wanted in there. And then Minnesota, they just couldn't buy a bucket. it was one of those things where they just could not get the ball into the hoop, and it sucks because they're a really good team, but they just could not get the ball in the hoop. And yes, when you can't, you know, get consistent stops on defense, you're gonna have to make your shots, and they just weren't making their shots. Minnesota was. So yeah, they flamed out at the end. Overall theme that I took away from the game was OKC's defense is legit. They get steals, they force you into mistakes, they are active with their hands, and they're able to get steals at a very frequent rate, and they're able to force turnovers that way. And Minnesota, they could shoot the three ball, and they got some good looks, and they that didn't drop. If they do drop, this is a more closer game. So, in game two, I wouldn't be surprised if, Minnesota starts hitting those open shots that were just right there for the taking, but they just couldn't get them to drop in game one. And, this is going to be interesting because then we'll see, you know, the adjustments that each team is going to make. But game one, Thunder take 114-88. I mean, it was just overall, once it got into the second half, OKC just owned Minnesota at the free throw line, in the mid range, and in the paint area, and they were just forcing turnovers. And to be honest, Minnesota just started missing shots, and they just weren't stopping them on defense. So yeah, that's the game one review right there. We'll see for game two what kind of adjustments each team is gonna make. So maybe the next game we'll see a three heavy approach from OKC, or they'll continue with the slashing to the paint and getting those foul calls. But we'll see what Minnesota has to do. I don't think they had a bad game plan. I just think they couldn't make their shots, and it was pretty evident that these shots weren't going down. So, they just had to do what they had to do on defense, but they couldn't. So yeah, that's gonna do it for me. I'm Lewis Fletcher with the Get Back. Shout out to myself for staying awake for this game, and I will see you guys after game one of the Eastern Conference Finals. Knicks versus Pacers. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care and take it easy. Peace.